So it is, my name's Catherine Fife. I'm the MPP, or I'm the NDP candidate for the riding of Waterloo. I want to welcome all of you here today. It's very fitting to welcome the next Premier of the province of Ontario to the ETFO location, because she was a strong, fierce critic for education, and certainly this government gave her a lot of material to work with. For those of you who don't know Marit, she is her advocacy and her voice brings a level of empathy and compassion to politics which is so needed today. When she's in a room with people, she meets them where they are, she listens intently, and she learns from those experiences. And that is why our policies and our platforms truly reflect the people of this province. It is my pleasure to welcome my friend and the next Premier of Ontario to the podium, Marit Stiles.
It's so good to be here in the Kitchener-Waterloo region and to be joined by our amazing candidates. We've got a great team here, as well as workers from across the region. Let me introduce our candidates first. Catherine Fife, of course, needs no introduction, the MPP for Waterloo, and our candidate there. Amazing. Knight, our candidate in Cambridge. Jody Szymanski, our candidate in Kitchener-Conestoga. And Jeff Dockersgood, our candidate in Kitchener-South Hespeler. Listen, Ontario should be a province that is full of opportunity. A place where you can find a home, where you can easily access world-class healthcare, and where you can get your kids the right support in school, where you can find a good job, and where the basics are affordable. But after 7 long years of Doug Ford, life is more expensive than ever. And here in Kitchener-Waterloo and all across Southwestern Ontario and Niagara, we see the impact of a government that has neglected the things that matter most. Over 70,000 people had to turn to a food bank last year in the Kitchener-Waterloo region. Let that sink in, eh? Shameful. Rent has gone up 45% since Doug Ford took office. I just want to say that again. 45% in 7 years. And over 75,000 people right here do not have a family doctor in this region. Ford has failed in Kitchener-Waterloo, and the story is the same across the entire southwest of Ontario. We're in a time where a lot of people are feeling very anxious. They're feeling anxious about their bills, about the rising cost of groceries and other household goods, and what the future holds, especially with everything that's happening right now with Trump's tariffs. As we face this unprecedented challenge as a province, Doug Ford quit his job as Premier. But you know what? I'm applying for that job. I'm running to be Premier alongside this extraordinary team to return the promise of more opportunity and more affordability in Southwestern Ontario. So today I'm releasing our plan for Southwestern Ontario and Niagara, because there is so much more that we can do to build up the region and support the families that live here. So this platform is our commitment to you. It's representing, I think, the hard work of our amazing incumbents in this region, and also the new ideas of our amazing slate of NDP candidates. Central to our offer is a promise to take on the top issue that people are facing right now, and that is the rising cost of everything. Grocery costs are out of control. So we're going to offer immediate, steady relief for families all across Ontario with a monthly grocery rebate that puts money in your pocket and food on your table. Our rebate will give lower and middle income families extra help each month to pay for groceries and to make ends meet. A family of 4 could get up to $122 back every month. That's over $1,400 per year for families across cities and towns all across the southwest of Ontario. We're going to help with the cost of housing as well. And we're going to bring back real rent control, because it's about time, to protect tenants and to keep costs from climbing. Because the biggest expense that families are facing every year is the increasing cost of rent. And when it comes to Trump's tariff actions, we are going to protect jobs. I always say, and I'm going to say it again here, I will fight like hell for every single job in Ontario, and I will defend every single worker. Here in Kitchener-Waterloo, we're going to support the innovation sector. It's grown right here in this region, and it is world-renowned. We are proud of it. We're going to invest in all the things that attract more business, more talent, and the next generation of innovators. Things like affordable homes, good schools, including strong post-secondary institutions, strong public transit, a high quality of life. We're also going to support our world-class agricultural sector, because that's how we put made in Ontario food on the table. Going to protect farmland, we're going to keep the sector strong, and we're going to support the next generation of farmers. Our Buy Ontario Procurement Directive, which I have to give our MPP Catherine Fife, our finance critic, so much credit for this. Our Buy Ontario Procurement Directive is going to help create new jobs across sectors, including our homegrown tech sector, and help scale up businesses to reach new markets. And as your next premier, I'll set things right in Kitchener-Waterloo and across Southwestern Ontario and Niagara region. This election is an opportunity. We can turn the page on 7 long years of Doug Ford, and we can elect a government who will be on your side. I am ready to make that happen. I am so happy to be here with all of you, and now I'd like to introduce John Tartt, President of the United Steelworkers Local 4120. Thank you.
What an honor to be introduced by the future Premier of Ontario. Thank you, Marit. What a time we live in. Do you remember when, if you're as old as I am, when you could get a basket of groceries for $100 or a shopping cart full? Remember when it went to $200? Remember when it went to $300? Now it's gone up to $400. Thanks a lot, Doug Ford. Really appreciate that. I work at the University of Guelph. We have, and the higher ed sector, been chronically underfunded for decades. It's not just the Conservatives, it's the Liberals too, who have cut university funding, said, hey, you know what, we're not going to pay you as much per student, so let's let you deal with international students and bring them in and charge them whatever you like. Well, now the federal government has said, no, we can't do that either. We need central funding from the government. And Marit is going to do that for us. That's my sector. Living in Guelph, homelessness is on the rise. We have a mayor who is more than happy to get rid of encampments downtown so that it looks nice and people can come shopping. Well, what about those people? Where do they live now? What do they do? Why don't we have some kind of process in place for them? Housing is incredibly expensive. Do you think that the Ford government, with his cronies in the development world, are going to be building livable houses? No, they don't. Look at all the new construction going on. It's $1 million and multi-million-dollar housing. That's not for us. We need something that is affordable for everybody. So I'm really looking forward to Marit leading this province with a great group of people behind her, bringing the costs back down, representing us, representing the people of Ontario, not the businesses and not the billionaires. Thank you, Marit.
Folks, I'm very happy to take your questions.
Hi there, Alan Hale from the Trillium.
Hi, Alan. I feel like you're following me.
I am, at least from yesterday and today.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
I have a question for John. Maybe this isn't your wheelhouse since you're in post-secondary education, but can you give us any kind of insight on what's going on discussion-wise inside United Steelworkers in response to these tariffs? Like, how is the union reacting? What are you guys talking about? What do you want to see happen?
I think that, you know what, Marit is probably a better one to answer that. What's going on with the tariffs, what my union is doing specifically is not the entirety of just because we're United Steelworkers. I work at a university. We also represent people in home care. We represent people all over the place. So I'm not really the specialist to talk to about steel and tariffs. I bet you Marit can give you a much better answer.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I'll tell you this. I mean, I was in, yesterday I made a kind of last minute stop in Hamilton to talk to listen to steelworkers there, and I was up in Sault Ste. Marie a couple days ago at Algoma Steel, actually, meeting with management there and with their members. And what I was hearing yesterday, certainly in Hamilton, is what I've been hearing from steelworkers, including District 6 President and all across the country, is that they're feeling strong. Steelworkers, in the face of these tariffs, who work in those mills and such, they're feeling strong. They're united. They want a strong, united, all Canada approach to this. And I'll tell you another thing they told me yesterday. They said back in 2018, because they've been through this before, right? They've seen this before. In 2018, when Trump came after everybody, they said to me, you know, Doug Ford, he sat on the sidelines. He said, it's not my problem. And he let the federal government deal with it all. And I think, you know, that's what we're seeing again. Doug Ford off doing his own thing. And people are worried about that, but they're worried. And this is another point that the steelworkers made to me yesterday. What they're worried about is that life is already so difficult. So when things come after us, when Donald Trump and his government come after us hard on tariffs, are we already feeling vulnerable? Are we already weak? Because our people can only take so much. And that's where we're at right now. And so we need to tariff-proof our economy.
But are you hoping that this trip to Washington, D.C. that the PC leader is on, are you hoping he's successful in this trip? Like, are you rooting for him to be able to get these tariffs off the table again?
I absolutely want us to get these tariffs off the table, and we should do everything we can. But I do think that it's going to take a strong and united approach across Canada to make that happen. So I'm looking forward to hearing what all the premiers are fighting for down there. I know other premiers will be joining him as well. But I do think that, you know, in terms of doing this in the middle of an election, people see his calling of the election as a very cynical move. At a time when we needed to be not distracted, standing together. He's chosen this path. He chose to step down as premier. And he is choosing to do this at a point when we were very vulnerable to those threats. So obviously, you know, we got to push back hard. We have to push back in a unified, strong and unified way. That is absolutely what's required here. And I'll support anybody who's doing the work to get to do that. Yeah.
On a different topic, back in the legislature, you've often espoused the belief that supervised drug consumption sites save lives. But we haven't really heard you make that point during this campaign, and we haven't heard you say that you would reopen the ones the PCs are closing. Is there a reason why that is?
You know, what I've said before, and I'll say it again, is you know, a government that's looking to address the addiction and mental health crisis in this province has to approach addiction as a healthcare issue, and that means approaching it with evidence and with empathy. And I think that this government, knowing the evidence that supports sites like that, made a crass decision without replacing those resources with any other resources. And I don't think their hard hub approach, although I love the hard hubs, and I know that that's a community-based approach, a lot of communities came up with that, it is also, it's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket for what we need to do, and I will be basing my decision about all of that on evidence and on empathy.
So you're not committing to reopening them?
We've been, you know, as you know, we opposed the closing of those sites, but and we're going to, and I continue to oppose that. But I will say, you know, I think what I listen to is Ontarians, and what I hear from Ontarians is their family members are dying. Their friends are dying. They need more support, not less. Taking away support without replacing it with support where they need it, when they need it, is not going to save lives. And I think that's our concern.
All right, one more question before I yield the microphone. So I see there's a lot of different unions here today. And we see the PCs are really pushing the fact that they're getting like private sector construction union endorsements. We saw, I think, on your social media there was a checklist, and they had all these different unions that have endorsed them, and then no checks on like the Liberals or the NDP.
Well, obviously, we wrote that website.
But I mean, all of these different unions are coming from a very specific kind of like work. They're all construction unions. They're all blue-collar jobs. And you have a member of the United Steelworkers here, but he works in post-secondary education. So, is there some sort of disconnect here between the NDP and like blue-collar workers? Like, what?
No.
What?
No,
and
look.
why are they? So why are they going towards the PCs?
No, Alan, first of all, I got to correct you on this. United Steelworkers are endorsing us provincially, the whole province.
That's right.
Every steelworker. And you know, I know that some of the trades unions, like the skilled, we talked about the construction unions, they often will support the government in power, and I understand that, I do. I don't think that anybody out there, working people, are fooled by what Doug Ford is selling here. Because when it comes to standing on a picket line with workers, you will not find a conservative, and for the most part, you will never find a liberal either. New Democrats are there with you every step of the way, and we will continue to be. And I also want to say I'm so excited. Yesterday I stood with nurses from all across Ontario. I've been standing with teachers, with education workers from all across Ontario, are turning out and supporting our candidates directly on the ground, knocking on doors, putting up signs. Like, this is what matters. And you know, I'm really proud. I mean, today we just learned we've gotten the formal endorsement of the transit union. ATU is endorsing NDP. He cosplays, I would say, as a working person, but it's the NDP, and we're also committed. We're the only party that is committed to putting forward strong labor legislation, like anti-scab legislation, that will really back up working people when it matters, where it matters. All right.
Hi, Hannah with CTV Kitchener here. I want to start off with education.
Sure.
So Ontario universities, they're facing a financial crisis right now with institutions like the University of Waterloo, for example, cutting costs and freezing hiring. So how would an NDP government address the chronic underfunding of post-secondary education?
Well, we're going to start with funding post-secondary education properly. We've seen under consecutive Liberal and Conservative governments, today, again after 7 years of Doug Ford, Ontario is at the bottom in terms of funding for post-secondary education of all the provinces in Canada. It is just disgraceful. And we see that right now, as John was mentioning, in programs that are being cut all across this province, programs that we need to continue to build our communities, build our economy for our future. So we have to get back into the business of actually funding post-secondary education properly. I would say as well, part of that means we need to take some of the pressure off of students too. Students and their families are feeling a lot of pressure as well. So along with properly funding post-secondary institutions and education, we're going to turn student loans into grants, and we're going to cut interest on existing student loans. But the critical piece to all of this is listening to the sector. I mean, I'm going to communities. We heard from Guelph. I was in Belleville last week. I'm in Ottawa. I'm here. Like, everywhere we go, programs are being cut. That means that students are not getting into the programs they need. And of course, we're losing important jobs. This is, without question, post-secondary institutions also are central hubs, economic hubs for many of our communities.
So speaking to jobs and going back to the tariffs as well too, with tariffs back kind of on the Ontario campaign spotlight with the latest threat from Trump.
Yeah.
You know, local steel workers are, of course, worried about their future, worried about their jobs. And you've mentioned Ontario needs to tariff-proof its economy. So what exactly would that look like specifically?
Yeah, well, I mean, a few things. First of all, a big piece of it is taking a look at, I'd say a couple points. One is we need to strengthen Ontario. So that means, you know, investing in our post-secondary education, investing in our schools, bringing back and strengthening our healthcare system, investing and respecting the workers that work in those sectors, right? So that we can build that back again so we are not so vulnerable. It means giving people a hand up right now after 7 years of Doug Ford's affordability crisis. We need to help people out, which is why we are offering these grocery rebates. But it also means looking at our supply chains, looking at how dependent we have become. We're never going to completely separate ourselves from the United States. They're an important partner, an important ally, an important trade partner. But I think it's become more clear than ever that we have to figure out ways to find other allies in the world, democratic allies. We have to make sure that we're investing now in new supply chains. And very importantly, and I leave this for last only because it's the most important, I think, is made in Ontario solutions. Building made in Ontario, production, buying made in Ontario. And I gotta say, I am just so inspired by how many people have so quickly turned things around. I talk to people every day who say, I am not buying another American product. I am looking for a Canadian made, and I am for sure looking for Ontario made every single time I go to the grocery store. That is what we're gonna do, but we're gonna take it to another level because we have a Made in Ontario procurement directive that we're gonna be bringing forward. And that, you know, you have to understand, as Catherine Fife has made very clear in all the work she's done on this, Ontario as a government, we actually have an enormous amount of buying power. We got to shift this around. No more contracts going to the US when we could build those Ontario line vehicles, for example, in Thunder Bay. Thank you. You're welcome.
Hi, good morning, Matt Mead, Canadian Press. You mentioned in your opening statements the issue of rent control. You seem to have different rules than the rules that are in place. You're proposing new rules. How these are going to be different, and how are they going to be more effective than what we already have?
Yeah. So Doug Ford and his government put in place loopholes to allow for a rent to continue to climb. In certain circumstances, we're going to close those loopholes, and that's going to mean that a lot more people don't see their rent climbing every month and every year at the rate that it has been. You heard me say that rent here in the Kitchener-Waterloo region has gone up 45%. I mean, imagine your rent has doubled in 7 years. That is completely unsustainable. I mean, considering that people's wages haven't doubled, right? But the cost of groceries has, and the cost of rent, so we have to address rent. And I do want to just share one little story while I can, which is, and this is a story actually, it was in Ottawa recently when I was there and met with a woman named Lynn, who's 64 years old, worked her whole life. And in the last number of years has been renting. And had a bit of bad luck, ended up in the hospital for a very short time, came out, and could not afford her rent, could not make the rent payments, lost her home, and ended up living in her car for 8 weeks. And then when I met her, finally found her way to shelter and really wanted to share this story with me because she said to me, never in a million years would I've imagined I would end up in this situation. And I hear stories like that all the time, and I know my colleagues here do, absolutely. So, you know, this is the reality. And then the flip side of that is young families. Young people who are maybe just starting out and maybe imagined one day they could own a home. And they can't possibly save. So it's both bringing back rent control, but it's also, you know, by closing those loopholes. But also, and I have to say this, we have to end rent evictions and dem evictions in cities all across this province.
Post-secondary institutions, one of the main causes of the financial crisis that many institutions are facing right now is the Ford government's decision to freeze tuition fees for domestic students. Are you going to keep these fees frozen, or are you going to lift the freeze?
Look, this is not a time, in my opinion, we will not be raising the tuition. It's not a time to raise tuition on hardworking, struggling Ontario families. That's not going to happen. But that's why, you know, and it's really important. I want to make sure everybody understands this. We will invest in our post-secondary institutions. Other provinces do that at a far greater rate than Ontario does. How do we continue to compete if we can't offer the same here? It's absolutely essential, and again, I mean, this is about saving jobs in our post-secondary institutions, saving the programs that we need if we're going to continue to innovate and build our economy, and it's absolutely essential to the future of Ontarians, Ontario students and their success.
On the line, we have Colin Jamala. Colin, go ahead.
Hi, Colin.
Colin, go ahead. Okay.
Oh, there, okay. Yep. Hi, Colin.
Oh, hi, you can hear me now. Oh, fantastic. So Doug Ford is set to address the U.S. Chamber of Commerce today, and we got a bit of a preview of his speech. One of the things Doug Ford is expected to talk about is promoting this Fortress and Can, but Ford is also expected to say something to the effect of, you know, working together, Canada and the U.S. can usher in a new century, one that President Trump calls a golden age. I'm wondering what you think about Doug Ford kind of parroting to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce this idea that Donald Trump wants a golden age and that Ontario is somehow endorsing that idea.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that, I mean, that's unfortunate. And I will say, I think that what Doug Ford's message to Americans does not reflect how most Canadians, and certainly people here in the province of Ontario, feel right now. We're not feeling very generous toward Donald Trump. And, you know, when I think we've already seen Doug Ford has shown us who he is. You know, telling us that he 100% supported Donald Trump, even during the election when Donald Trump was threatening our country and our sovereignty and our economy, our workers. That tells you everything you need to know about Doug Ford. I think Ontarians are right not to trust him and to be cynical about his trip to the United States because he's going out there with these messages. And I'll also just add this, you know, I've often said all along since he started floating these ideas out there on his own, I think they're back of the napkin ideas. I think we should be looking right now at how we diversify our trade partners and allies out there. I think Ontarians are looking for a strong push back and a fight for every single job and every single worker. In this case, I would say the customer is not always right, Doug. In fact, sometimes the customer needs to stand outside for a few minutes, you know, if they're mistreating the employees over here, the workers. We won't stand for that. I will stand up to Donald Trump. I was pleased to hear that the Prime Minister is talking about a really strong, tough, unified push back on the steel and aluminum tariffs, and I support that.
And just to follow up, Marit, so what would you, a couple of questions here. Doug Ford and the Progressive Conservatives have been talking about can since, I want to say about mid-January. Yet, you know, about a month in, there hasn't really been a lot of uptake. The federal government isn't necessarily endorsing or talking about that strategy, and we don't hear that being reflected back from our American partners. I'm wondering what you think that says about that strategy, and what would you like to see Doug Ford come back with from Washington if this is a trip that's designed to kind of influence and perhaps, you know, gain Ontario something in this tariff war? What should Doug Ford be coming back with as some kind of concrete evidence that this trip is actually worth the expense?
Well, I'll tell you what. If I was Premier, when I am Premier, I would have been on the phone day one with every governor that we have a trade relationship with, working hard with them because they need us just like we need them. And that's what I will expect from this conference. I will expect those conversations to be happening. I don't need him, none of us need him down there making election speeches. We need him making sure coming up with real deals that are going to actually ensure that we can put some pressure, real pressure, on Donald Trump. Which I have to say, I'm not a fan of Fortress AmCam. I think that we're deep into, I think most Ontarians that I'm talking to and folks in the industry think we have to take a different approach, that we have to build a more tariff-proof economy, and that this is heading us in the wrong direction.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say also, like, for me, this is just a lot of slogans, a lot of campaign slogans, but not actually real action to deliver support for working people here. And I don't see anything related to that coming out of Doug Ford right now. I'd like.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Sorry. You're never sure on these phone lines. Anyway, it seems that Doug Ford was talking tough for a while ago on to follow on what Colin was just asking you. And Doug Ford, do they seem to be more of in an appeasement mode now, do you think? Like, what do you think is going on there?
I think that Doug Ford, he's made it very clear. He's a fan of Donald Trump, and he was a fan of Donald Trump when Donald Trump was initially threatening our country and our sovereignty during that election campaign. I don't think you can trust Doug Ford. I think Ontarians know you can't trust Doug Ford to stand up for Ontario workers and Ontario jobs and for our future, because after 7 years of Doug Ford and his government, things have never been tougher for Ontarians. We have been left weak and vulnerable in front of the giant elephant that is coming after us, right? We do not need this. I'll talk about elephants later. But look, you know, this is coming after us, and rather than actually nothing that Doug Ford has done so far has worked anyways. He is not standing united. He didn't even go to the meeting last week with industry and workers and the federal government and other partners to come up with a strong and unified strategy. He's approaching this like it's a campaign slogan and not an actual fight for our very future. So I would rather he was here. I mean, I'm here talking about these issues. I want to be in a position to make this a reality. I want Ontario to elect us as government so we can be on your side.
We're just about to the halfway point of the campaign.
Yeah.
Ford still has a big lead. A lot of people here are ticked off at Donald Trump, as you just mentioned, and yet he's aligned himself with Trump, but that doesn't seem to be sticking to him. Do you know any ideas why that's not happening yet?
Well, you know what, Rob, my sense as I go across the province, everywhere I'm going, is that people are just waking up to the fact that there's an election, you know? I think they're just starting to realize in the winter, emerging from our households, shoveling our driveways, talking to our neighbors, realizing that there's an election going on. And I think momentum is shifting. I'm certainly feeling it out there in communities across Ontario. As you know, our focus is very much on flipping blue ridings to orange all across this province. We're seeing record donations. I think we had $200,000 donated to the NDP on Saturday in one day. We have broken all our fundraising records. And you know, for those watching, you know, why does that matter? Because the NDP, all of our donations are small donations from regular people. So a lot of people are saying, you know what, I like what you're saying, and I need you to do well in this election. We need you to defeat these guys. So I take that as confidence in the approach we're taking. We've got teachers out there and other education workers all across the province out canvassing with our candidates, all kinds of folks from labor, steel workers out in the Sioux supporting us, nurses from all over Ontario standing with me yesterday. I feel really good about it. I think things are changing, and I can't say it enough, you know. Doug Ford decided to resign as Premier a few weeks ago. I think people are just beginning to realize that now. And this is an opportunity. And I think Ontarians are waking up to the fact that this is an opportunity to actually make change, to vote for something you can really believe in, and vote for a government that's on your side, and that's the NDP.